I never thought a simple piece of paper could shatter my world, but that's exactly what happened on a quiet Tuesday morning at my flower shop. The note was tucked between the stems of a fresh delivery of peonies, crisp white paper folded into perfect quarters, like something you'd pass in high school. My name is Kala, and until that moment, I thought I had everything figured out. Successful florist, loving husband, and 16 weeks pregnant with our first child. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about Sarah from the Denver office. I read those words at least 10 times, my hands trembling more with each pass. The morning sickness I'd finally gotten over threatened to return as I sank onto my work stool, the scent of flowers suddenly overwhelming. "Hey, boss lady." My assistant Maya's cheerful voice made me jump. I crumpled the note and shoved it into my apron pocket. "Those centerpieces for the Thompson wedding are ready for your final approval." "Thanks, Sal. I'll check them in a minute." I forced a smile, but Maya's expression told me I wasn't fooling anyone. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just pregnancy stuff," I lied, waving her off. "The baby's not a fan of the lily fragrance today." Maya nodded sympathetically and returned to her work, leaving me alone with my thoughts and that damned note burning a hole in my pocket. Declan and I had been married for 3 years. He traveled frequently for his tech executive job, including regular trips to the Denver office. But Sarah? He'd never mentioned Sarah. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." Something cold settled in my chest as I stared at those 7 words. How many times had I received that exact message over the past few months? I'd always trusted him, attributed his late nights to the promotion he'd been chasing. Now every late meeting and business trip took on a sinister new meaning. The bell above the shop door chimed, and I quickly wiped my eyes. An elderly woman walked in, heading straight for the roses. I watched her carefully select a dozen pink ones, her wedding ring catching the light as she examined each bloom. "Anniversary?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I wrapped her flowers. 52 years today," she beamed. "My Harold still brings me flowers every week, but I thought I'd surprise him this time." "That's beautiful," I managed, though my throat felt tight. "He's a lucky man." After she left, I pulled out the note again. The paper was expensive, the kind used in corporate offices. The handwriting was neat but distinctive, definitely a woman's. I took a photo with my phone before carefully refolding it. That evening, I sat at our dining room table until 9, pushing food around my plate. When Declan finally came home, his tie was loose and his hair slightly disheveled. He kissed my cheek, smelling of unfamiliar cologne. "You didn't have to wait up, honey," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "You need your rest." "I wanted to," I replied, studying his face. "How was your day?"
Busy.
"The Denver team's giving us trouble with the merger." He loosened his tie further. "Actually, I might need to fly out there next week." My heart skipped a beat. "Denver? Will you be working with Sarah?" The pause was brief, barely a second, but it was enough. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes before he answered. "Sarah? I don't think I know a Sarah in that office." In that moment, watching my husband lie so effortlessly to my face, I realized 2 things. The anonymous note was real, and the man I married was a stranger. As he headed upstairs to shower, I placed a hand over my growing belly and made a silent promise to our child. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent the next morning going through old photos on my phone, searching for any hint of Sarah in the background of Declan's work events. My sister Avery sat across from me at her kitchen table, her coffee growing cold as she watched me spiral. "You need to eat something," she said, pushing a plate of toast toward me. "The baby needs more than your anxiety for breakfast." I ignored the toast but rubbed my growing belly absently. "He lied to my face, Ave. About Sarah." I saw it in his eyes. "Men lie about all sorts of things," Avery said, reaching for my phone. "But jumping to conclusions won't help. What else has changed recently?" I thought about it while she scrolled through my photos. The late night started about 3 months ago. New cologne. Private phone calls. God, I'm such a cliché. You're not. Avery stopped scrolling suddenly, her expression changing.
Wait.
Is this from the company Christmas party? She turned the phone to show me a group photo. Declan stood near the edge, his arm around a tall woman with auburn hair. They weren't touching inappropriately, but something about their body language made my stomach turn. That's Sarah, I whispered, recognizing her from her LinkedIn profile that I'd found last night. He said he didn't know her. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Avery went to answer it, and I heard Evelyn's voice in the hallway. My mother-in-law appeared moments later, carrying a casserole dish and wearing a concerned expression. Declan called, she said, setting down the dish.
He's worried about you.
Said you've been acting strange and sleeping at Avery's. Did he mention why I might be upset? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Evelyn sat down, her perfectly manicured hands folded on the table. No, but I'm not blind, dear. Something's wrong, isn't it? I slid my phone across the table, showing her the Christmas party photo. Do you know her? Evelyn studied the image, her face carefully neutral. Sarah Winters. She's new to the Denver office. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I met her at the Hendersons' anniversary party last month. Declan didn't mention she'd be there. Declan claims he doesn't know her at all. Something flickered across Evelyn's face, disappointment, maybe anger. She opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by my phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. Check his credit card statements. Dinner for two at La Maison Rouge every Thursday night. My hands shook as I showed the message to Avery and Evelyn. La Maison Rouge was the most expensive French restaurant in the city. Definitely not where Declan's usual business meetings took place. I need to see those statements, I said, standing up. They're in his home office. Calla, wait. Evelyn caught my arm. Let me talk to him first. If what you're suggesting is true. No. I cut her off. I need to know for myself. I drove home in a daze, rehearsing what I'd say if Declan was there. But the house was empty, his car gone from the driveway. In his office, I found the statements easily. He'd never bothered hiding them before. Every Thursday for the past 3 months. La Maison Rouge, $300 plus.
My phone buzzed again.
Another unknown number. Check the jewelry store receipt in his jacket pocket. The one from last week. I froze, remembering the navy blazer he'd worn to work yesterday. It was still draped over his office chair. With trembling fingers, I reached into the pocket and pulled out a crumpled receipt. A diamond bracelet, worth more than I made in 2 months at the flower shop. I'd never received a diamond bracelet. The front door opened downstairs, followed by Declan's footsteps.
Kaya?
Are you home? I stood there, receipt in one hand, credit card statements in the other, as his footsteps approached the office. In that moment, I made a decision. I quickly took photos of everything and slipped the evidence back where I'd found it. There you are, he said from the doorway, smiling that perfect smile that used to make me weaken in ease. What are you doing in here? I forced myself to smile back. Just looking for a pen. My hand unconsciously moved to protect my belly. Actually, I was thinking about dinner. How about La Maison Rouge on Thursday? His smile faltered just for a second, but it was all the confirmation I needed. Thursday night arrived with the weight of inevitability. I sat in my car across from La Maison Rouge, watching the valet parking area through a light drizzle. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, and the baby kicked restlessly, sensing my tension. Declan's silver Mercedes pulled up right on schedule. I watched him step out, straightening his tie before walking around to open the passenger door. Sarah emerged in a sleek black dress, her hand lingering on his arm as they walked inside. The diamond bracelet sparkled on her wrist. My phone buzzed. Avery, don't do anything crazy. Think of the baby. I texted back, just gathering evidence. But we both knew I was lying. Inside, I gave the maitre d' my name. I'm meeting my husband, Declan Rivers. His eyes widened slightly. Monsieur Rivers? He's already seated with a guest. I know, I said quietly. That's why I'm here. He led me through the restaurant, past candlelit tables and intimate conversations. I spotted them in a corner booth, their heads close together over a bottle of expensive wine. Declan was laughing at something Sarah had said, his hand resting on hers. "Your table, madam," the maitre d' announced loudly. Declan's head snapped up. The color drained from his face as I slid into the booth next to Sarah, who jerked her hand away from his like she'd been burned. "Don't stop on my account," I said, picking up a menu. "The Coke oven looks amazing. Is that what you usually order here? Every Thursday?" "Calla," Declan started, his voice strained. "This isn't. We're discussing work." "Really?" I turned to Sarah. "The bracelet was for work too? It looks lovely on you, by the way. Though I imagine it's awkward wearing jewelry from another woman's husband." Sarah stood abruptly, gathering her purse. "I should go." "Please don't," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I have questions. Like how long you've been sleeping with my husband. Before or after you found out I was pregnant." The restaurant had grown quiet, nearby diners pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. Declan reached across the table, his face a mask of controlled panic. "You're making a scene," he hissed. "Think about my reputation." "Your reputation?" I laughed, the sound hollow. "I'm thinking about our child. The one you apparently forgot about while buying expensive dinners and jewelry for your mistress." Sarah bolted then, leaving her wine glass half full. Declan started to rise, his eyes following her, and something inside me snapped. I grabbed his wine glass and emptied it over his pristine white shirt. "Go ahead," I said. "Chase after her. Show everyone exactly who you are." He sat back down, jaw clenched. "You're being hysterical. This isn't good for the baby." "Don't you dare," I whispered, tears finally spilling. "Don't pretend you care about this baby when you've been—" My voice caught as a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, clutching my stomach as another wave hit. Declan's anger turned to alarm.
"Calla?"
"What's wrong?" "I don't." The room started spinning. Something's not right. Through the haze of pain, I heard Declan calling for help. Someone mentioned an ambulance. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Evelyn rushing through the restaurant doors, her face a storm of fury directed at her son. I woke up in the hospital to the steady beep of monitors and Dr. Lin's concerned face. He explained that stress and elevated blood pressure had caused complications, but the baby was stable for now. Strict bed rest was mandatory. Evelyn sat in the corner, her usual perfect posture rigid with tension. "Declan's in the waiting room," she said quietly. "I told him to stay out until you're ready." "I'll never be ready," I whispered, touching my belly. "How do you face someone who's destroyed everything you believed in?" "You don't," she replied, taking my hand. "You focus on healing. And then you make them face the consequences of their actions." The monitor's steady beeping filled the silence as I closed my eyes, remembering those anonymous notes that had started everything. I still didn't know who sent them, but I was beginning to understand why. Some truths need to be exposed, no matter how painful the revelation. 3 days into my hospital stay, Dr. Lin delivered news that made my heart stop. "The placenta is showing signs of distress," he said, pointing to areas on the ultrasound screen. "Your blood pressure isn't stabilizing the way we'd hoped." I clutched the thin hospital blanket, trying to steady my voice. "What does that mean for the baby?" "It means choices, Calla." He sat on the edge of my bed, his kind face serious. "You need absolute rest and zero stress for the remainder of your pregnancy. That means no work, no confrontations, and definitely no more restaurant incidents." A soft knock interrupted us. Declan stood in the doorway, wearing a fresh suit and carrying a bouquet of roses, store-bought, not from my shop. Dr. Lin excused himself, giving Declan a look I couldn't quite read. "The nurses said you're not eating," Declan said, placing the flowers beside my bed. "Funny how betrayal kills the appetite." He sighed, loosening his tie. "I've been thinking, maybe we should try counseling." "Now you want counseling?" I laughed bitterly. "After I end up in the hospital?" "I want to fix this," he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Fix what, exactly? The affair? The lies? Or just your public image? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Check his email. Password is Sarah's birthday, 0517. My heart raced as I deleted the message. Declan was watching me closely. Who was that? Avery, I lied. She's bringing me some things from home. He nodded, but something in his expression changed. I need to get back to the office. Graham called an emergency meeting about the Denver merger. After he left, I pulled out my laptop. My hands shook as I typed in his email password. It worked. Dozens of emails between him and Sarah filled the screen, dating back 6 months. They were careful, using coded language about project deadlines and client meetings, but some messages were more explicit. Plans for a weekend getaway. Photos. Promises. A new email notification popped up from Graham Henderson to all senior staff. My blood ran cold as I read it. Effective immediately, all Denver office operations will be relocated to our Singapore branch. Staff transfers will be finalized by end of month. Another message appeared below it, from Sarah to Declan. We need to talk. Now. I was still staring at the screen when Evelyn arrived. One look at my face, and she closed the door behind her. What did he do now? I turned the laptop toward her. She read in silence, her expression hardening. Singapore, she finally said. He was planning to leave. The baby and I were just inconvenient obstacles. My voice cracked. He never wanted this family. Evelyn's phone rang. Graham Henderson's name flashed on the screen. She answered on speaker. Evelyn, is Calla with you? She needs to hear this. I'm here, I said. I just fired your husband, Graham said without preamble. The board discovered he's been falsifying reports to cover unauthorized expenses. The Denver merger was his excuse to embezzle company funds. The monitor beside my bed started beeping faster as my blood pressure spiked. How long? Evelyn demanded. At least 6 months. Sarah Winters was helping him hide the transactions. They're both being investigated. Dr. Lin rushed in, alarmed by the monitors. He took one look at my vitals and ordered everyone out. Wait, I called to Graham. Who sent the anonymous notes? Who exposed them? There was a pause on the line. That would be my wife. She oversees all executive expenses. When she saw the pattern, the rest of his words faded as Dr. Lin injected something into my fore. As consciousness slipped away, I heard him telling Evelyn they might need to consider early delivery if my condition didn't improve. In my last moments of awareness, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't going to save my baby. I needed to let go of Declan's betrayal and focus on survival, not just for me, but for the innocent life depending on my choices. The monitors slowly steadied as I made my decision. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Some victories come from walking away. 2 weeks after being released from the hospital, I found myself standing in our walk-in closet, staring at the dress Declan had insisted I wear to tonight's company gala. Despite Dr. Lin's orders for bed rest, Declan had been relentless about my attendance. It's crucial for appearances, he'd said that morning. The board needs to see we're still a united front. The dress was new, emerald green silk that probably cost more than a week's worth of flower shop revenue. A peace offering, or maybe just another attempt to control the narrative. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Sarah will be there tonight. So will the FBI. I deleted the message just as Declan appeared in the doorway. You're not dressed yet? I shouldn't be going at all, I said, one hand resting on my expanded belly. Dr. Lin was clear about Dash. Dr. Lin doesn't understand what's at stake. Declan's voice was tight, controlled. 2 hours. That's all I'm asking. Then you can come home and rest. The way he said home made something twist inside me. This house hadn't felt like home since the first note appeared in my flower shop. At the gala, Declan kept his hand firmly on my lower back, steering me through crowds of executives and their spouses. Their smiles felt practiced, their eyes calculating. Everyone knew about his firing, about the investigation, but nobody dared mention it. Mrs. Rivers, Graham Henderson appeared beside us, his wife Patricia close behind. "You look lovely tonight. Though I must say, I'm surprised to see you here given your condition." Declan's hand tightened on my back. "We wouldn't miss it. In fact, I was hoping to discuss Dash." "I don't believe we have anything to discuss." Graham cut him off coldly. "Patricia, why don't you show Calla to the terrace? Some fresh air might do her good." Before Declan could object, Patricia led me away. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. "The agents are already here," Patricia said quietly, nodding toward two men in dark suits by the bar. "They're waiting for Sarah to arrive." She agreed to turn state's evidence. My legs wobbled. Patricia guided me to a chair. "You knew," I whispered. "You sent the notes." She squeezed my hand. "I've seen too many good people destroyed by men like Declan." When I found the discrepancies, the terrace doors burst open. Sarah strode out, her face pale but determined. Behind her, Declan looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Tell her," Sarah demanded, her voice shaking. "Tell your wife what you promised me." Declan stepped forward, his facade cracking. "Sarah, don't dash. He said you lost the baby." Sarah turned to me, tears in her eyes. "He said you had a miscarriage months ago, but were pretending to still be pregnant to trap him. That's why he needed the money, to start over with me in Singapore." The world tilted. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard gasps from the growing crowd of onlookers. The FBI agents moved closer. "Is that what you told everyone?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "That I'm crazy? Faking a pregnancy while you played the sympathetic husband?" "Calla, I can explain Dash." "Mr. Rivers." One of the agents stepped forward. "We need you to come with us." Everything happened fast after that. Declan trying to run, the agents catching him, Sarah crying as she handed over documents, Graham making statements to the press gathering outside. Through it all, I sat perfectly still, one hand pressed against my very real, very active baby, who chose that moment to kick hard enough to make me gasp. Evelyn appeared with my coat and car keys. "Let's get you home, dear." "Not that house," I said, standing carefully. "I can't go back there." She nodded, understanding. "Then we'll go somewhere new. Somewhere you can both heal." As we left through a side entrance, I caught a glimpse of Declan being led to a waiting car, handcuffed and defeated. Our eyes met briefly. In that moment, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't brought me peace, but the truth had set me free. My baby kicked again, stronger this time. A survivor's kick. Like mother, like child. The morning after the gala, I sat in Graham Henderson's office, watching him review security footage from the company's parking garage. On the screen, Declan and Sarah hurriedly loaded boxes into his car 3 nights before the arrest. "Financial records, offshore account details," Graham explained, pausing the video. "They were planning to destroy everything before the FBI caught up with them." I touched my belly, feeling sick. "How much did he steal?" "Nearly $4 million. Graham slid a folder across his desk. "But that's not why I asked you here. These are the texts between Declan and the board members." My hands shook as I read messages where Declan had systematically painted me as unstable, delusional. He'd convinced everyone I'd lost the baby months ago but couldn't accept it, claiming my mental state was why he needed to handle all our finances. "He was setting me up," I whispered. "If everything went wrong, you'd be the perfect scapegoat." Graham's voice was gentle. A grieving, mentally unstable wife who forged his signatures while he tried to protect you. The baby kicked hard, as if protesting the lie. A sharp pain followed, making me gasp.
"Calla?"
Graham stood, concerned. "Should I call Dr. Lin?" "I'm fine," I lied, but another pain hit, stronger this time. Within minutes, I was in an ambulance, Evelyn holding my hand while paramedics monitored my vitals. Dr. Lin met us at the hospital, his face grim as he reviewed the readings. "The stress has triggered early labor," he said. "We need to stop it. You're only at 30 weeks. Hours passed in a blur of medications and monitors. Avery arrived, then Patricia Henderson. Through the haze of pain and fear, I heard them discussing Declan's bail hearing. He's claiming temporary insanity, Evelyn said quietly. His lawyer wants Calla's medical records to prove she's unstable. He can't, Avery protested. After everything he's done, another contraction silenced their conversation. Dr. Lin checked the monitors, shaking his head. The medications aren't working, he announced. We need to prepare for delivery. It's too soon, I pleaded, panic rising. The baby's not ready. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. If we wait. The rest of his words faded as reality crashed in. This was Declan's final betrayal, not just destroying our marriage or my reputation, but potentially our child's chance at a healthy life. A nurse appeared with admission papers. As I signed them, she handed me an envelope. This came for you, at the front desk. Inside was a familiar piece of white paper, but this note wasn't anonymous. I'm sorry for my part in all this. I never knew about the baby. He told me so many lies. Sarah. The paper crumpled in my fist as another contraction hit. Through the window, I could see reporters gathering outside the hospital. Someone had leaked the story. Don't let them in, I gasped. Don't let them turn this into another headline. Nobody's getting past me, Avery promised, her voice fierce. You focus on my niece or nephew. Dr. Lin started preparing for the emergency C-section. As they wheeled me towards surgery, Evelyn stopped us. Graham just called, she said. Declan made bail. His lawyer's requesting an emergency hearing about custody, claiming you're not fit. The monitor screamed as my blood pressure spiked again. Dr. Lin ordered everyone out, shouting for additional medication. In that moment, lying there while they rushed to save my baby, I realized how completely Declan had orchestrated my destruction. Even from jail, he was still trying to control the narrative, to paint me as the villain in his story. Stay with us, Calla, Dr. Lin urged as my vision began to blur. Your baby needs you to fight.
Fight.
That's what I've been doing since the first note appeared in my flower shop. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. For me, for my child, for the truth itself. As they pushed me into surgery, I made one final promise to my baby. We would write our own story, and Declan wouldn't be the author of either of our fates. 3 days after my emergency C-section, I woke to find Evelyn sitting beside my hospital bed, her face drawn with worry. My daughter, Rose, was still in the NICU, fighting for every breath, but getting stronger each day. Declan's here, Evelyn said quietly. He's demanding to see the baby. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain from my incision. He can't dash. I know. Security's keeping him in the waiting room, but... She hesitated. There's something you need to know about my son. She pulled out an old photograph, a young Declan, maybe 7, standing between 2 adults I didn't recognize. His foster parents, Evelyn explained. Before I adopted him. They were embezzlers too, convinced Declan to help them forge documents. When they were caught, they abandoned him, claimed he'd tricked them. The pieces started falling into place. That's why he tried to frame me? He repeats patterns when he's scared. But that doesn't excuse Dash. A commotion outside interrupted her. Declan burst in, followed by security guards and Avery, who looked ready for war. Where is she? He demanded. Where's my daughter? Sir, you need to leave. A guard started, but I held up my hand. Let him stay. The room cleared except for Evelyn, who stood protectively beside my bed. Declan looked terrible, unshaven, suit wrinkled, eyes wild. The lawyers say I have rights, he said. You can't keep her from me. Rights? My voice shook. Like my right to a safe pregnancy? My right not to be gaslight and betrayed. I never meant. He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. Everything just spiraled. Sarah, the money, the lies. I couldn't stop. Like your foster parents couldn't stop? He flinched as if I'd struck him. Mother, what did you tell her? The truth, Evelyn said firmly. Something you should try sometime. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Rivers? Your daughter's oxygen levels are improving. Would you like to see her? Declan stepped forward, but I shook my head. My name is McBride now, and only I'm going to see her. She's my child too. His composure cracked. You can't erase me like they did. No one's erasing you, Declan, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Every lie, every betrayal, every attempt to make me look crazy, those were your choices. I'll fight you for custody, he threatened, but his voice wavered. With what? I asked. Your embezzlement charges? Your documented attempts to frame me? The text messages to the board calling me mentally unstable. He slumped against the wall, the fight draining from him. I don't know how to fix this. Start by fixing yourself, Evelyn said. Turn yourself in, take responsibility. Show your daughter who you really are, not who you're pretending to be. A soft knock interrupted us. Dr. Lynn stood in the doorway with Graham Henderson and 2 FBI agents. Time to go, Mr. Rivers, one agent said. Your bail's been revoked. As they led him away, Declan turned back. Her middle name, he said softly. Could it be Evelyn? After the only parent who never gave up on me? I looked at his mother, saw the tears in her eyes, and nodded. Not for him, but for the woman who'd chosen to love an abandoned child, who'd stood by me when that child lost his way. Rose Evelyn McBride, I said. A name with both roots and new beginnings. After he was gone, I let the nurse wheel me to the NICU. Through the incubator glass, I watched my daughter's tiny chest rise and fall, each breath of victory. You're nothing like them, Evelyn said, touching the glass. Either set of parents. You chose truth over revenge, strength over bitterness. I placed my hand over hers. We all have patterns, don't we? The trick is knowing which ones to break. In the quiet beeping of the NICU monitors, I found peace in that broken pattern. In the knowledge that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of the past to protect the future. 6 months after Rose came home from the NICU, I reopened my flower shop. The morning sun streamed through the windows as I arranged fresh peonies, the same flowers that had held that first anonymous note so long ago. Those are pretty, Avery said, bouncing Rose on her hip. My daughter's laugh, still new and precious, filled the shop. But maybe we should stick with roses, given her name? I smiled, touching a soft peony petal. Sometimes beautiful things can bring painful memories and hope at the same time. The bell chimed as Patricia Henderson entered, carrying a familiar white envelope. This came to our office, she said, handing it to me. Declan's lawyer asked us to forward it. I'd heard he'd taken a plea deal, was serving time while attending intensive therapy. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. You don't have to read it, Avery said quietly. But I did. I needed to know how this story ended. Inside was a letter, along with legal documents signing away his parental rights. His handwriting was different, less controlled, more honest somehow.
Calla.
The therapist says I should start with the truth, so here it is. I was terrified of becoming my foster parents. Every lie I told, every betrayal, was me running from their shadow. But in trying to escape their pattern, I created my own. Rose deserves better than a father who might repeat that cycle. She deserves the strength and honesty you've shown. I'm signing away my rights not because I don't love her, but because I love her enough to protect her from my demons while I learn to fight them. Take care of our daughter. Tell her whatever truth you think is right when she's older. And know that despite everything I did, you are always stronger than any lie I could tell. Declan. Evelyn arrived as I finished reading, carrying coffee and pastries. She'd been my rock these past months, proving that family isn't always about blood or broken promises. He's doing the work, she said, seeing the letter in my hands. Real work this time. I know, I replied, watching Rose grab at a sunflower with tiny, determined fingers. But some breaks can't be unbroken. The morning crowd began trickling in, regular customers who'd stood by me through the scandal. New faces drawn by the story of renewal in the local paper. I helped them choose flowers for celebrations, apologies, fresh starts. Graham Henderson stopped by later, not for flowers but with news. Sarah's testimony helped recover most of the stolen funds. The board voted to establish a trust for Rose's education.
You didn't have to do that, I said.
No, he agreed. But sometimes justice looks like giving someone a future untainted by the past. As the day wound down, I sat at my workbench, designing arrangements for a wedding. Rose slept peacefully in her carrier, surrounded by the scent of flowers and new beginnings. Avery had gone home, but Evelyn lingered, arranging roses with surprising skill. You know, she said, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means growing something new from broken ground. I looked around my shop, at the flowers that had held the first warning, at the daughter who emerged from the final crisis, at the chosen family who helped me survive it all. The desire for revenge had faded, replaced by something stronger, the peace of choosing my own path. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for showing me that patterns can be broken. I deleted Sarah's message without responding. Some chapters need to stay closed, even as new ones begin. Rose stirred, reaching up with perfect tiny fingers. As I lifted her, a peony petal drifted down, landing in her open palm. She clutched it, not destroying but holding, teaching me one final lesson about beauty and strength. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or dealing justice. Sometimes it's about proving that broken things can bloom again, different but whole, in gardens of their own making. I tucked the petal into my daughter's baby book, marking not an ending, but a continuation, our story, growing wild and free, exactly as it should.
On a day that started like any other, Martha, a lady whose entire life had been centered around helping others, found herself in the most difficult situation of her life. She was in a doctor's office, sitting in an uncomfortable, stiff chair, her hands clasped together in a worried gesture. She was waiting for Dr. Freeman, an oncologist with a gentle manner, and eyes that betrayed bad news, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. Dr. Freeman spoke tentatively at first. "Martha, the results of your tests have indicated that you have advanced stage cancer." The remarks greatly disturbed Martha's tranquility, falling into the workplace silence like stones into a serene lake. She felt as though a cloud had covered her mind and that the world had slowed down for a brief while. "What are the odds that I will survive?" Martha asked, barely able to speak above a tremulous murmur as she tried to gather herself. Dr. Freeman sighed, considering his next move with caution. "It's challenging to pinpoint, Martha. Although the likelihood is low, there are possibilities for intense treatment. We are discussing a regimen of radiation and chemotherapy, potentially with surgery in between. Not only will it be difficult, but there will be serious adverse consequences." A knot began to form in Martha's throat, but rather than giving in to hopelessness, something within her stoked a hidden spark of will. She raised her head and met the doctor's eyes with a fresh intensity. With increasing power in her voice, she said, "So we fight. I must try, no matter how slim my chances are for my family and myself. I refuse to surrender without a struggle." With a glimpse of appreciation in his eyes, Dr. Freeman nodded. "Martha, that really brave of you. You won't do this by yourself. We'll exert every effort to combat this." Martha felt a strength come from within her at that very instant, in spite of the fear and uncertainty all around her. Armed with a ferocious determination to life, she was prepared to confront anything that came her way. She knew it would be a difficult path, but she also knew that every step she took to defend her life would be worthwhile. That evening, there was a lot of suspense and anxiety in Martha's living room. Her husband Daniel, a gentleman whose smile could lift anyone's spirits, was sitting on the couch, staring at Martha. The teen son of the marriage, Mark, whose excitement and vitality were the source of joy for the whole family, ceased his activities upon realizing the gravity of the situation. They both waited, uneasiness lingering in the air. Taking a deep breath, Martha summoned all the courage she had left. She spoke in a shaky but forceful voice. "Daniel, Mark, I have something very important to share with you." There was a deafening silence that seemed to come from the outer world, pausing to listen. The physicians have determined that I have cancer, and it's advanced. It is a more evolved phase. The words hung there, fear and doubt weighing heavily on them. Daniel got up right away, his expression showing how shocked he was by those remarks. "Martha, my dear, how is this possible?" His voice was a meek, emotionally charged whisper. Mark, on the other hand, appeared still, his eyes wide as the situation gradually dawned on his impressionable mind. "You'll be all right, Mom." Normally exuding youthful assurance, his voice was now tinged with anxiety. With a look of love and resolve in her eyes, Martha turned to face the two. "I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a difficult battle, but I swear I'll give it my all. I'm not by myself either. As a family, we will tackle this together. No matter how hard this obstacle is, we can overcome it." Daniel stepped forward, throwing his arms around Martha in a show of strength and defense. "Every step of the journey, Martha, we're here for you. This will not be faced by you alone." As Mark joined in, the family grew stronger in the face of hardship. "Mom, we work together as a team. We'll work together to overcome this." Despite the emotional turbulence that evening, Martha's family discovered fresh strength in their bond. They were aware that the journey ahead would be difficult, but they also believed that by working together, they could overcome any obstacle. The commitment to battle and triumph over that obstacle as a team served as a lighthouse to help them navigate the impending storm. Martha's journey in her fight against cancer grew more difficult as the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months. Not only did the rigorous and draining treatment wear her out, but it also affected her family. After providing steadfast support at first, Daniel and Mark started to feel the weight of the situation. Daniel, who has always been the family's pillar of support, became bogged down in a maze of new duties. He was worn out from visiting the hospital, taking care of Martha, and attempting to keep things somewhat normal for Mark. "How are we going to continue like this?" he murmured to himself one night as he was quietly preparing dinner. "Everything seems so altered." Mark, however, had to contend with his own inner conflict. His social life and academic performance started to suffer as a result of the demanding schedule and the gravity of the circumstances. In a rare instance of peace between them, Mark confessed to Martha about feeling cut off from his friends and the life he once led. "I miss the way things used to be, Mom. It's challenging, but I strive to be strong." Even though she was struggling herself, Martha could not help but notice the suffering her disease was causing to her family. She gathered Daniel and Mark in the living room on a particularly trying night. A room that had once been full of laughter but was now overshadowed by the reality of their circumstances. "I understand how difficult this is for you both," she said, her voice stifled with feeling. "And I really apologize for anything that we are experiencing. But just now more than ever, I need you." Daniel answered, "We know, love, and we're here," with tears still welling up in his eyes. Simply said, "It's harder than we anticipated." With a sincerity that only a young person can have, Mark continued, grasping his mother's hand. "Mom, I'll try to be stronger for you." The fissures in the family relations were exposed during the conversation that evening. There was an emotional gulf between them due to the reality of their new life, which was filled with uncertainty, worries, and treatments. As Martha's condition worsened and became a more controlling force in the family's life, Daniel and Mark were forced to make painful moral and emotional decisions. They started to feel the weight of the unforgiving and brutal reality of the situation in ways they had never anticipated. Daniel spoke up on a depressing afternoon when the home seemed to be filled with the sound of broken hearts. His voice trembled with a mixture of resolve and agony. "I simply cannot continue doing this anymore," he admitted, averting Martha's eyes. "It's breaking me down on the inside, and I know Mark is too. In order to rediscover who we are, we require some time and room to breathe. Mark, though young, carried in his eyes a burden far beyond his years. "Mom, I love you, but this is too hard. I feel like I'm losing myself," he said, the words coming out in a painful whisper. Faced with this unimaginable abandonment, Martha felt as though the last thread of hope had been ripped from her heart. However, amidst the storm of her desolation, she found unexpected anchors: her sister Beatrice and the nurse John. Beatrice, always the rock upon which Martha leaned, surged forth with unwavering strength and love. "Sister, I'm here," she said, gripping Martha's hands firmly. "No matter how difficult it gets, you won't face this alone. We'll get through this together." John, the nurse who had become a constant and comforting presence, offered not only his professional care, but also a friendly shoulder. "Martha, I see your struggle, and you're stronger than you think. I'm here to take care of you, to ensure you have everything you need." In this moment of abandonment and vulnerability, Martha found a new kind of family, one formed not only by blood ties, but also by bonds of compassion, care, and unconditional love. Beatrice and John became her pillars, offering her the support she needed to face each new day with hope and determination. They reminded her that even in the darkest hours, she was not alone. In the quietude of her darkest days, Martha felt the weight of loneliness like a heavy cloak upon her shoulders. The battle against cancer seemed like a steep and impassable mountain. Yet within her, a flame of resilience began to burn brighter, fueled by the solidarity of those few but invaluable who remained by her side. Among these pillars of support, John the nurse emerged as a central figure, not only as a caregiver, but as a true friend. In a particularly challenging afternoon, after an exhausting treatment session, Martha found herself engulfed in doubt and fear. It was then that John, sensing the shadow looming over her spirit, sat beside her, gently holding her hand. "Martha," he began with a voice soft yet firm, "I know the journey is tough and the path uncertain, but you're not alone in this fight. Your strength and courage are inspiring, and I'm here by your side every step of the way." Encouraged by John's words, Martha felt a renewal in her spirit. "Thank you, John," she replied, a glint of determination in her eyes. "Sometimes I feel lost in the midst of this storm, but knowing I have you and Beatrice with me gives me the strength to carry on. I won't let myself be defeated." Together, Martha and John faced each day as a new battle, an opportunity to defy despair and embrace hope. Treatment sessions, though grueling, became more bearable with John by her side, offering emotional support, attentive care, and above all, unwavering friendship. Martha's journey, though marked by adversity, was also a tale of incredible human strength and solidarity. Through the darkness of illness, she found light in the kindness and support of those who stood by her side, proving that even in the most challenging circumstances, solidarity and love for others can bring strength and hope. After a challenging period of battles and trials, Martha finally began to glimpse new horizons in her life. With the disease now in remission, she allowed herself to dream again, opening her heart to new experiences and possibilities. She continued with treatment, but didn't need to go to the hospital as often. So, she made the decision to move to a new neighborhood, and that was the first step in this journey of renewal. It was a Saturday morning, the sun bathing the streets with its golden light, when Martha, accompanied only by her hopes and dreams, crossed the threshold of her new home. The neighborhood was peaceful, the streets lined with trees whispering in the wind. Neighbors with welcoming smiles wasted no time in greeting her. In one of these warm welcomes, Martha met Helena, a lady with a gentle gaze and hands that carried the wisdom of someone who knows the land. "You'll see, dear," Helena said with a smile that illuminated her face. "This place has something special. People here have a unique way of connecting." It was Helena who introduced Martha to the world of gardening. On a sunny afternoon, while showing her own garden filled with colorful flowers and aromatic herbs, Helena shared, "Each plant here has its story, just like us. Taking care of them teaches me about patience, care, and above all, the beauty of transformation." Martha, touched by Helena's passion and wisdom, felt an immediate connection with the earth and its wonders. She started small, with a pot of daisies and one of lavender. Gradually, her garden began to bloom, and with it, her soul as well. "I never imagined that the earth and plants could teach me so much about life," Martha reflected, her hands covered in soil, a contented smile on her lips. "Gardening has brought me peace, a joy I didn't know was missing. It's as if by caring for these plants, I'm taking care of a part of me that had been neglected." Martha found in gardening not only a new passion, but also a form of meditation and connection with the world around her. Her days were now filled with the joy of seeing her plants grow, the peace of being outdoors, and the satisfaction of creating beauty with her own hands. With each new flower that bloomed, Martha felt her life gain more color and meaning, proving that even after the darkest periods, it's possible to rebuild, renew, and flourish again. She cherished those who never abandoned her, who stayed with her on her worst days. Whenever she could, she gathered with Jan and Beatrice to chat and keep the bonds of closeness. Years had passed since Daniel and Mark, driven by inexplicable selfishness, had left the family shattered. The memories of their actions, though distant, still echoed with a dark persistence. Moved by the news of Martha's success, Daniel decided to return, his mind numb with her achievements. On that day, the air was charged with the electricity of an impending storm, both meteorological and emotional. Daniel, with hesitant yet determined steps, crossed the threshold separating Martha's past from present, bringing with him clouds of past conflicts. Driven by a desire to mend ties he had severed with his own hands, he found Martha in her garden, a sanctuary of peace she had cultivated with the same care she had used to rebuild her life. "Martha," Daniel began, his voice trembling, revealing the internal storm consuming him. "I know I have no right to just show up like this after so long, but I needed to see you. I needed to try to make amends for the past." Martha, surprised by Daniel's sudden appearance, rose from where she had been kneeling among the flowers, wiping her hands on her skirt. Her gaze, though calm, carried the strength of waves that resist and shape the rocks around them. "Daniel," she replied, maintaining a distance that was more emotional than physical. "The past is not a broken vase that can simply be glued back together. What's done is done, and I've built a new life, a life that has no room for what tore us apart." The honesty in Martha's words hit Daniel like a lightning bolt, illuminating the reality he had been trying to avoid, that some actions are irreversible and that forgiveness doesn't always rebuild burnt bridges. "But Martha, I've changed," Daniel insisted, hopelessness beginning to tinge his voice. "Is there something I can do to—" "To what, Daniel? To turn back time?" "We both know that's impossible," Martha interrupted, her voice firm but not devoid of compassion. "You need to understand that sometimes facing the past means accepting that it doesn't define our future. My future doesn't include you." The conversation, though brief, was a tense encounter, a clash between Daniel's desire to re-enter Martha's life out of greed and the unyielding reality of the new existence she had forged for herself. Confronted with the truth in Martha's words, Daniel felt the weight of his past actions more than ever. Martha, though shaken by the attempted invasion of her present by the past, remained steadfast, a living testament to her own resilience. In the end, Daniel left, but he didn't accept defeat. The next day, he found a lawyer to file a lawsuit against Martha, demanding that she include him and Mark in her will. Upon learning about the lawsuit filed by her son and husband, who had abandoned her, Martha was extremely hurt, but she didn't falter. She then decided to countersue them, filing for divorce, citing abandonment of a vulnerable person, and alleging that they only returned for money. She also sought damages for all the turmoil of their abandonment and their return after years. It was on a night when the blue light of police sirens cut through the darkness, reflecting on the tense faces of everyone involved, that Daniel and Mark, until then immersed in their own justifications, found themselves abruptly confronted by the reality of their actions. The arrival of the police, an impartial and determined force, marked the beginning of a new phase, one where the consequences of their actions could no longer be ignored. "Gentlemen, you are under investigation," announced the officer, his voice firm and authoritative, cutting through the tense air. "Every action has consequences, and it's time to face them." Daniel, his face pale under the intermittent light, exchanged a frightened look with Mark. This is a misunderstanding," he stammered, trying in vain to find an escape in the web of lies they had woven. Mark, on the other hand, remained silent, the reality of his choices finally settling in his heavy heart. Amidst this chaos, Martha, though torn apart by pain and betrayal, rose with a strength she didn't know she possessed. The decision to move forward with the complaint didn't come easy. Every word of the testimony reopened wounds she desperately tried to heal. However, driven by a visceral need for justice for the suffering caused, she spoke. "I need justice to be served," Martha told the officer, her voice trembling but determined. "It's not just for me, but for everyone who has suffered at the hands of people who think they can get away with it. They abandoned me in the worst phase of my life and disappeared for years. Now they return and claim they have the right to my money. That's unacceptable." Martha's defiance, her refusal to let the deeds of those who hurt her define her, was what made her courageous in the face of hardship. Martha started down the path of healing, bolstered by her pursuit of justice, while Daniel and Mark dealt with the legal fallout from their deeds and an uncertain future. For the culprits and the victim alike, the police involvement that evening marked the close of a troubling chapter and the start of a fresh one. It served as a sobering reminder to Daniel and Mark that no question goes unanswered. It was a promise to Martha that justice may bring closure and the chance to move forward one step at a time, even in the face of suffering and betrayal. The lawsuit against Daniel and Mark developed little by bit as the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months. Every hearing and every statement served as a continual reminder of the decisions they had made and the dire repercussions of those decisions that now faced them. Martha, meantime, observed from a distance, a bystander in a conflict she had courageously decided to take on. Over coffee one tranquil afternoon, Martha confided in her sister Beatrice, "I never imagined it would come to this. But somehow, facing all of this has made me stronger." Her sister nodded encouragingly as she listened carefully. "Martha, you have such incredible bravery. Few people could get the courage to accomplish what you have." Martha thought about those remarks. It had been a difficult road with many times of uncertainty and hopelessness. Nevertheless, she had discovered pieces of herself along the road that she was unaware of. Despite its cruelty, adversity had been a harsh but fair teacher. She looked out to the horizon and said, "I've learned so much. About justice, about resilience, and about the value of moving forward no matter how difficult the path." Martha sensed a chapter of her life coming to an end as Daniel and Mark were now negotiating the rough seas of the judicial system. Even though it wasn't quite a joyful ending, she was able to go on and start laying fresh groundwork for her life. She devoted her life to causes close to her heart and found fulfillment in supporting those going through similar hardships. Every individual she helped and every life she touched served as a reminder that hope existed even in the most hopeless situations. Most significantly, she opened her heart to new possibilities by allowing herself to love and be loved once more. As she confidently declared, "What happened shouldn't affect me," Martha felt the soft morning breeze caressing her face as she strolled across the park. "It's just a part of my story, and I decide how the rest will be written." Martha carried on with her life, giving herself over to people and things that really mattered, grateful for the lessons she had learned and the strength she had discovered in adversity. Though she was aware that there might still be difficulties along the way, she felt prepared to confront them with the confidence that, in the end, all would work out. After reading about Martha's journey, you may be wondering how you may overcome hardship and change your own life. Martha's tale is just one illustration of how obstacles can guide us toward progress and self-discovery. I have something unique for you if Martha's story has inspired you and you would like to read more tales like hers. Announcing the ebook, a meticulously selected compilation of 49 stories, one for every day, called 7 Weeks of Inspiration, is intended to lead you on a path of self-exploration and metamorphosis. Every day for 4 weeks includes not just a narrative, but also a thought-provoking question, a prayer to uplift your soul, and a practical task to help you apply the lessons to your everyday life. The best part is that you may become even more fully immersed in the stories when you buy the ebook because it includes both the written and narrated versions. You'll also get 3 exclusive goodies that will enhance your transformational experience. Don't pass up the chance to start this life-changing adventure. To receive your 7 weeks of inspiration, click the link below. Every day of your life, give yourself permission to be inspired and transformed. Narratives have the power to inspire and move. Please remember to like and share if you liked this. In the following story, I'll see you. Do you still exist? I was astounded by what I saw when I went to my son's residence. I gasped when I was met with a startling sight in my son's home. There, shackled and malnourished, was my missing 5-year-old grandchild in the living room. The room was filled with discarded plastic bottles and empty bread bags. I hurried to offer him water in my hurry, but he angrily objected, saying, "Give it to my sister first." "Your sibling? Who is this woman?" Perplexed, I asked. Then I heard a baby's weak screams coming from a corner of the room. Before long, the startling reality was revealed. I made up my mind to punish the hell out of whoever it was who made my grandchild go through this. "Do you want to lend me money again?" I sounded off over the phone to my son in a frustrated tone. My spouse went away at the age of 62 3 years ago. I've been living alone ever since. I never had any financial issues because I worked for a long time and received a sizable inheritance from my husband. But for now, my son Thomas, who moved out already, is my biggest worry. Even as a working adult, he has always been irresponsible. He frequently demonstrated bad work ethics, carried work-related materials home, and slept in excessively. His work history was characterized by frequent job changes and sporadic requests for financial assistance. Even though I was disappointed in my own son, I couldn't give up on him entirely because of my familial ties. Suddenly one day, Thomas and a woman arrived at our house. "Mom, I'm going to marry this girl." Startled, I greeted the attractive young woman. I said, "Hello, I'm Ain." "Ain, nice to meet you. However, getting hitched so quickly? It surprises me." Thomas, who was chewing gum, laughed. Well, what can you do when you get pregnant? She then said, I'm 4 months pregnant, and gave her belly a little pat. Despite my amazement, I managed to offer my congratulations and bid my son and his spouse farewell. Pregnancy, despite the altered order, is a pleasant event. I'm wondering if they too could properly raise a child because I'm going to have a grandchild. I felt conflicted. When I finally went to see Thomas and his family at their house, I was shocked. The interior appeared to have been looted by a thief. There were cup noodle cups and empty convenience shop meal containers all over the place. I was compelled to cry out, "What in the world is this mess? Are you eating healthily, Anne? Now it's more than just your body. Shall we cook together now that I have some veggies?" My daughter-in-law, who had a slightly bigger tummy, twisted her face in response. "Ugh, cooking is such a hassle," was her reply. "But you need proper nutrition," I started to add, but Thomas cut me off abruptly. "An annoying mother-in-law who nags all the time won't be like you know. Quit making fun of my wife." "I have no intent of doing that," I said. I brought some veggies, and Anne pushed them toward me. "Please don't make needless comments. I really don't need this kind of thing," she continued. "You really irritate me." That day I had no choice but to silently withdraw under their scathing condemnation. When the time came for her to give birth, the two of them came to show me the child. My expression softened as I gazed at my grandchild swaddled in a blanket. "How sweet." "I take it that it's a boy. What is his name?" "Harry is his name." "But Mom, you have something to give us, don't you?" "Yeah, well, you're correct. It's a modest present for the new baby." I gave the envelope to her. Anne grabbed it quickly and looked inside. "Tom, there's $1,300 in here," she cried out. My son smiled. "Fantastic. Perhaps I should pamper myself." My son and daughter-in-law didn't seem to be listening when I tried to tell them to spend the money for the baby. My son then turned to face me. "You know, Mom, it's getting tight in here with the baby and everything. We are considering moving into your empty house." At the time, I had recently moved into a fairly priced apartment from the house that I shared with my spouse. We were debating whether to rent it out or sell the house. Money is undoubtedly needed to raise children, and maybe having a home would allow for more carefree parenting. Thinking about that, I gave a nod. "I recognize. You are free to occupy the space and pay no rent." My youngster said, "I'm grateful. Should we relocate the following month?" But Anne, who had listened to all of this, said something. I heard her say, "But please don't come to our house." Surprised, I stumbled and said, "Huh?" "Please leave us alone. We don't want any interference," Thomas went on. "I comprehend," I answered. As a result, I was only able to go to my son and daughter-in-law's home when it was absolutely necessary. I would sometimes get in touch with them to go out to dinner, and when I did, they would grudgingly let me see Harry, but it was obvious they would rather be left alone. My grandchild was nevertheless developing nicely, and had even begun referring to me as Grandma. But as usual, right before Harry turned 4, I got a message from my son telling me that I wanted to bring Harry's snack when I messaged him. "Anne doesn't want to see you anymore," he stated. "Please stop doing this and avoid visiting our home. You are unable to enter as we have changed the locks." His biased remark shocked me and made me angry. However, I opted to watch the scenario for a little, in case I accidentally insulted Anne without recognizing it. But in the process, I lost track of when I should have been at my son's place, and eventually stopped going entirely. Every now and again, for whatever reason, I would get hesitant, terse responses from Thomas. "Harry is 5 years old already, is he not? I hope all is good with him." I carried on with my lonely life in spite of my concerns. Then one day I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end said, "I would like to request repayment of your son's debt," when I answered. After some more discussion, I realized that my son had unilaterally added me as a co-guarantor. I had previously been requested for financial assistance, but I had never anticipated anything like this. I tried to get in touch with Thomas right away, but I got no response. Normally, after some time, I would get a response, but this time was different. I went to my son's place, frustrated. I hit the intercom button, but nobody picked up. I called several times, but the line never went through. Everything stayed the same, even when I shifted the times of my trips. This continued for a few days before I started to worry. Is it possible that they vanished? In what location are they? I looked around for any hints. Thomas had quit. They told me when I went to his place of employment. The neighbors had no idea where they were either. It was already a full week after my first visit. I thought about calling the police, but I thought I should try their residence one more time first. I hit the intercom button, but nothing came out. It was locked and I could not open the front door. I sighed and turned to go when I heard a slight thump coming from within the home. It seemed like something had moved. In desperation, I cried out, "Is there anyone inside? Please reveal your face." However, no one replied. But I was attracted by the sound coming from inside, and I wondered if I could enter the house somehow. At that moment, I saw something I had missed the last time I was there. The garden-side casement window's latch was open. I went in nervously and saw something that made me scream in terror. My 5-year-old grandson, Harry, was crouching and chained in such position. "Are you alive?" I cried out and hurried over to his side. Harry was surrounded by broken plastic bottles and empty bread bags in the dilapidated room. "Grandma, did you come to rescue me?" he muttered. "What in the world is going on here? Let's get you some water first." I ran to get some water and tried to give it to Harry, who was still in his chain. Then he let out a cry. "Give it to my sister first." "Your sister? Who's your sister?" In the next moment, I heard a feeble cry from the corner of the room. As I turned my gaze in that direction, I accidentally dropped the cup I was holding. To my astonishment, there lay an about 3-month-old baby. The shock of discovering this infant's existence overwhelmed me more than the distressing sight of my grandson, Harry. Both Harry and the baby appeared weakened. Desperate to help, I unfastened Harry's chain, placed him and the baby in the car, and rushed to the hospital. The examination results indicated that both individuals were suffering from malnutrition. When the doctor asked, "May I inquire about the circumstances?" I was unable to respond because I hadn't been involved with my son and daughter-in-law for some time. Harry and the baby were scheduled to be hospitalized for a few days, and subsequently, the police arrived after receiving a report from the hospital. When questioned by the police, I honestly conveyed that my son and daughter-in-law were missing. Harry, who was receiving intravenous fluids, was also asked various questions, but he appeared too frightened to say anything. After the police left, I approached my visibly calmer grandchild and asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" They said they were going abroad. They packed their big bags and left. What Harry began to speak in fragments about the situation, Mimi, my granddaughter, was born about 4 months ago. Harry was taught how to prepare milk and change diapers, and he took care of her. Then, an unsettling revelation followed. Harry was told, "We'll keep you tethered to the care of your sister so you won't escape before leaving on a trip. Even if the doorbell rings," I was told not to answer. As I stood there, frozen and covering my mouth, my grandchild burst into tears. Mimi had learned to roll over, and during one of Harry's naps, she managed to venture out of his reach. My trembling grandchild confessed, "I didn't know what to do, and I was so scared." I held him tightly as tears streamed down his face. Once I confirmed that Harry was asleep, I returned to the house where my son's family lived, intending to retrieve their belongings. I still wanted to think that Thomas and his wife were real at that point. Did they actually leave the kids behind and travel overseas? It is not possible. Harry must have misinterpreted something. A trip brochure on the table caught my attention as I was about to depart after packing the grandchildren's change of clothes into a bag. The cover said, "Elegant 2-week overseas cruise." I shook as I picked it up. A single sheet of paper with our travel itinerary for the two of us peeled out from between its pages. The congrats for making it through the delivery journey were extremely specific, mentioning that the money source was borrowed and that an elderly hag served as a co-guarantor. When I realized they had taken a trip, I was enraged to have put my grandchildren through this while they were merely taking a vacation. It is not human. I will never be able to forgive them, whether or not it is my son. I decided to give them a severe punishment. It was evident from looking over their itinerary that they were due back 3 days later. I got up and went to take care of stuff without thinking twice. 3 days later, I watched from the darkness outside their home as Thomas and Eileen turned, beaming with pride as they dragged bulky suitcases. Whoa, that was a lot of fun. Additionally, the food was excellent. Yes, it was very amazing. I appreciate you taking me, Tom. I'm not ready to go back yet. Let's go out soon again. They were talking as they turned the corner to the street where our house was, and they froze in disbelief. What's going on here, hey? What took place? Everything they owned had been hauled out and piled up in front of the house. I said just this, in a daze of shock and shock. It was me in front of the two of them. Did you enjoy your trip? Thomas seemed surprised to see me when I inquired. What the heck is going on, old hag? I'm asking if the overseas trip that subjected your own children to such experiences was enjoyable. My son and daughter-in-law cringed at the sound of my harsh voice, but they quickly counterattacked. Did we not warn you to stay away from our house? Did you simply walk in? I exhaled. I would not have continued if I hadn't been unintentionally appointed a co-guarantor, and I gave in when I saw that window open. Furthermore, I am the owner of this house. So, is there a problem? Eileen appeared surprised by the change in her expression. The in-law's daughter cried out, "Wait a second, where are the kids? Let's examine them." I answered, "The kids are in the hospital right now. The hospital is taking care of them." Their expressions suddenly showed surprise when they heard my response. "You provided them with food and drink, but not enough of either. They were out of supplies when I found them. Hospitalization was unavoidable due to their inadequate dietary status." I went on. In addition, Mimi has mastered the art of rolling over and has moved out of Harry's grasp while wearing a chain. She might not have survived if I hadn't found her in time. Eileen's embarrassed look was quite visible when I spoke harshly, but Thomas gave me a hard time. It's okay, since in the end, they're still living. But that's all about the house for now. Then, why are the possessions outside? I have no intention of allowing you to live here after such heinous acts, I said. Please go. I've chosen to list this house for sale. My son and daughter-in-law were astonished to hear this and started berating me. Old hag, stop being so foolish. Such despotism is not going to stand, I calmly retorted. Even if there is a home, you won't be able to return for a while. The son and daughter-in-law simultaneously yelled, "What?" at that moment. Just then, the far-off cry of a police siren got closer. If you answered, "Did you report us?" Then they have. I handled it earlier since the police told me to tell them when you got back after your kids were brought to the hospital, I stated matter-of-factly, maintaining the same look. My daughter-in-law started to quiver, and her face went pale. and I stared. What should we do, Tom? Will we be taken into custody? Dealing with the police is more than I can handle. Thomas clutched to me happily at that moment. Mom, please help us to resolve this. Tell them we're not guilty. We'll perform better going forward, I swear. Please. Tears and mucus stained Eileen's face as she spoke. Please, I beg you. And so, with unflinching resolve, I made my decision. I will not pardon you. I cut all links to my family today. There is no denying the crime you have committed against your children. Think about it and offer an apology. The son and daughter-in-law mumbled as they sagged in their chairs. However, a police vehicle pulled up right then, and I observed them being brought away with a detached sense. Following their police interrogation, Thomas and Eileen were found guilty. They spent a considerable amount of time in custody, and even when they were eventually freed, they had nowhere to go. I filed for custody of my 2 grandchildren through the judicial system. My son and daughter-in-law opposed it, but I eventually won because their actions were scrutinized. They currently reside in an unstable, dilapidated flat after moving far away. It's doubtful that they'll find steady work again after this occurrence, considering the media attention it received. However, I don't feel sorry for them. However, I am raising my 2 grandkids with all of my heart. Mimi is at her cute phase and has started talking. Harry assists with home tasks. Despite my busy life, I feel that every day is meaningful because of my grandchildren. I'll keep up my health maintenance and try my hardest for these priceless grandchildren. How did you come upon this tale? Please think about subscribing to our channel if you liked it. Till then, in our upcoming video. When 2 people unite in marriage, they make a solemn commitment to one another's eternal love and faithfulness. However, this does not always occur in a loving manner in some circumstances. There are times when everything can end abruptly at the altar, frequently with no warning of what will happen. We shall talk about a case when this occurred in this article. After 4 years of dating, getting engaged, and being fully dedicated to one another, Peter and Jasmine were a couple. Both of their families appeared to be in favor of the relationship, and they appeared to love each other very much. Everything was moving smoothly. Jasmine was unaware, nevertheless, that her fiancé Peter was having a covert liaison with Annabelle. Even though Peter and Jasmine had been having an affair for 2 years, they never stopped. Jasmine believed she had found the love of her life in Peter, and she loved him with all of her heart. Because he didn't want to be perceived as blatantly disloyal and thought of Annabelle as merely a fleeting fling, Peter was ready to call it quits on his relationship with her and move on with Jasmine. However, Annabelle broke the news to Peter a few weeks before the wedding. She was expecting a kid, and the child was his. Peter was feeling a lot of different things at the same time. However, he felt that his child needed a father figure and chose to live with Annabelle. In the end, this helped them become closer. The unfaithful couple vowed to be together forever and to use their child as a unifying force in their love vows. When the big day for Peter and Jasmine's marriage finally arrived, everyone was anticipating it. Unaware of what was about to happen, Jasmine's friends and family watched her with glee as she was filled with excitement and happiness. After an hour, Jasmine began to worry about the groom's tardiness. The phone finally rang, and Jasmine picked it up. Peter was the voice on the other end of the call, apologizing profusely, but we are unable to get married to Jasmine. I'm running away with another woman because I love her too. I truly apologize. I hope you find happiness. We're expecting a baby and she's carrying it. My child will not be left fatherless. Jasmine was horrified and heartbroken. Peter, how can you be such a scoundrel? She asked over the phone. You are abhorrent. You have been lying to me all along. I'm so sorry, Jasmine. Peter retorted, trembling. This is not how I wanted things to be. Although I had a covert relationship with Annabelle, I never abandoned you. After experiencing emotional confusion, I realized that I loved Annabelle and that I would live with her and my child. Please pardon me. I hope you find happiness and that you come across a man who genuinely loves you. To continue lying to both you and me would not be just. I apologize, Jasmine. I did everything for you, and this is how you repay me, Jasmine sobbed. All right, let me just tell you this. Everything in this world is repayable, and life will eventually charge you for the harm you caused me. This is fate, not a curse. Jasmine looked dejected and melancholy as she hung up on Peter. To everyone here, it is with great sadness that I announce there will be no wedding, she said to the guests. Over the phone, the groom ended our relationship and fled with his expectant partner. Peter is a shameless man and a disgrace. He tricked me, making me appear foolish. I apologize to all of you. You can leave now. It's okay if you wish to return the presents you received. Everyone at the time was sympathetic toward Jasmine because of her shattered heart and devastation. Jasmine's suffering was never their intention, and Peter's family expressed their regret for what had transpired. Jasmine said her fiancé's family farewell after realizing they were not at blame. With the assistance of her own family, she exited the event while still wearing her bridal gown. Jasmine's parents and siblings helped her through all of the hardships she endured. Her pals were there for her as well. Peter and Annabelle, in the meantime, boarded an aircraft at an airport on the opposite side of town and relocated to a different state in order to avoid the judgmental and hurtful looks they would likely receive from onlookers. After living their lives, Peter and Annabelle started a family. Jasmine sobbed, completely broken-hearted by the unfulfilled nuptials. She started to feel more and more down and unhappy. 3 years later, Jasmine recovered with the support of her loved ones and friends following multiple psychiatric treatments. She began studying, working at a corporation, going to the gym, and running. She met Nick, a young, stylish, gorgeous, and sophisticated man from a wealthy family who controlled the company, one day at her new job. He was extremely modest and honorable, in spite of his wealth and high social standing. Nick's secretary, Jasmine, received excellent treatment from him. He always treated everyone equally and justly, never abusing his position of authority to degrade or mistreat his staff members or subordinates. Jasmine was proud of her middle-class upbringing and didn't try to hide it. Nick seemed to really enjoy Jasmine, and he started to feel something for her over time. Thus, one day, Nick bravely greeted Jasmine by saying, "Hello, Jasmine. Do you want to accompany me on a date? Perhaps get together someday?" His request touched and honored Jasmine. She accepted out of deference to her boss, even though she wasn't seeking a relationship because of the fallout from being left on the altar and her diminished faith in men. Her preference was to have a single life. Nick tried to respect her feelings by not pressuring her after noticing her lack of interest. But her lack of interest just strengthened his resolve. As a result of his persistent efforts, their friendship developed. Nick invited Jasmine over for supper because he was growing more and more in love with her and wanted to win her heart. "Jasmine, I've been in love with you since the first time I saw you." Nick then declared his sentiments. "You are constantly on my mind. Are you going to be my girlfriend?" Though shocked and astonished by Nick's offer, Jasmine said, "I'm very honored, Nick, but you come from a high position, and I'm from a simple, humble family, with hesitation and shaking. Unlike you, I was not born into a wealthy family, and I don't have any titles. Are you certain about this?" "Jasmine, my parents were middle class like you, and they fought hard to get where they are." Nick smiled in response. "I learned a lot of principles from them. I owe them for the excellent childhood they gave me because of them, and I am the amazing person I am now. I want to see you happy because I love you." After fostering feelings for Nick for some time, Jasmine chose to take a gamble on herself and accepted Nick's proposal. Jasmine got along well with Nick's mixed-race parents and brothers, and he seemed to like her. Peter was living his idyllic life in another state with Annabelle and their child, longing his family, but also being afraid of their reaction should he go back to his native state. After 2 years, Nick asked Jasmine to marry him while kneeling in front of his parents and brothers at his home. He did this by displaying a wedding ring to her. "Be the woman of my dreams and my spouse." When Jasmine saw the wedding ring, she experienced mixed emotions. When Nick noticed Jasmine's expression, he inquired, "What's wrong, my love? Have I erred in some way? Tell me what's wrong, and I'll take care of it immediately." "No, Nick, you didn't do anything wrong, but seeing this ring brought back memories," remarked a moved Jasmine. Nick's mom inquired, "What happened, sweetheart?" "Explain it to us. Whatever it is will help," Nick added. "Tell us, my love. We're here to listen. Whatever it is, we'll understand." So Jasmine told her entire story about her wedding, where she was abandoned at the altar. Her unfaithful fiancé had run away with his pregnant mistress, and all her suffering followed. Nick and his family were moved by Jasmine's story and felt very sorry for her. Nick then opened up to Jasmine and said, "My love, I know how you feel. I've been through that too, and I know what it's like." Surprised, Jasmine said, "What do you mean, Nick? Someone in your position and with your status, who has everything, couldn't possibly go through that. My God, the world is so small." Nick emotionally replied, "I was about to get married 3 years before I met you. My future wife left me at the altar and ran away with an ex-boyfriend. Everything you suffered, I also suffered. I had depression, cried a lot, and even lost the meaning of my own life. But thanks to my family, I recovered, and now I'm here. I know how you feel because I felt it too." Jasmine held Nick's hand, and in front of his family, confident that she had found true love, she accepted his proposal. After 6 months of preparation for the big occasion, Nick was at the altar, waiting for his beloved. Jasmine arrived in a beautiful dress, and in front of all the guests, they got married. Their families were emotional. 3 months later, Jasmine was pregnant, which left Nick overjoyed. The happiness of motherhood and fatherhood made the couple very happy. Meanwhile, Peter and Annabelle were living their fairy tale, but they were about to be surprised. One day, Annabelle and Peter were at their home when someone knocked on the door. To their surprise, a ghost from Annabelle's past appeared in her life. It was a man named Blake. Nervously, Annabelle said, "I can't believe it. How did you find me, and what are you doing here, you idiot?" Also nervous, Blake replied, "It doesn't matter how I found you. Where's our son? I want to see our son." Screaming, Annabelle said, "Get out of here! Leave now!" However, Blake grabbed Annabelle and said, "It doesn't matter. I want both of you. You and our son. I love you both." Blake hugged Annabelle and kissed her on the mouth. At that moment, Peter arrived and saw the scene, saying, "Annabelle, what are you doing with this guy? I want an explanation." At that moment, Blake sarcastically said to Annabelle and Peter, "You traded me for this guy, a guy who left his fiancée at the altar and is raising another man's child. What an idiot you are." Angry, Peter tried to confront Blake, but Annabelle tried to calm them down. Mockingly and sarcastically, Blake said to Peter, "That boy you're raising isn't your son. I'm the real father of this child." Surprised, Peter said, "Annabelle, tell me this is a lie." Annabelle was stuttering nervously and was at a loss for words. Blake went on, "In actuality, this woman was with you for the entire time to take advantage of you financially. A DNA test is an option. She kept the pregnancy a secret from me. I learned of it from a friend. Although she was with us both, I am the true father." Peter's world fell apart at that same moment, and all he had ever believed in was a massive lie. Peter blurted out, "Annabelle, how could you do this?" "To be with you, I deserted my future wife at the altar. This is how you pay me back for leaving everything for you and running away to another state." Annabelle sobbed and added, "Remember the boy. Nothing is the fault of him." "Enough, Annabelle," Peter shot back. "I will no longer be manipulated by you. This is the child's biological father. I don't have to provide for a child that isn't mine. However, since I gave you this house as a gift and it is registered in your name, you are free to keep it. But I'm done helping out financially. I'm sorry I left Jasmine, a lovely woman, for someone like you. I'm returning to my native state in order to locate Jasmine and beg her pardon. The game of manipulation is over, Annabelle. I hope to never see you again. Leave my life now." After going to the bedroom to pack his things, Peter walked out of the house. He acknowledged the boy's innocence as he bid him farewell. That's where Annabelle and Blake ended up. Annabelle turned down Blake's attempt at an embrace, angry that her plot had been uncovered. Peter took another aircraft ride back to his home state, where he witnessed the results of his deeds. His family rejected him, his friends abandoned him, and all of this rejection made him unhappy. He was crying and pleading for someone to tell him about Jasmine, but no one would speak. When he went to apologize to Jasmine's family, they mercilessly threw him out. He only had one buddy who provided him Jasmine's address and warned him not to believe what he saw. In an attempt to win Jasmine back and seek her forgiveness, Peter paid her a visit. When Peter arrived, he discovered that the location was a mansion. Jasmine was massaging her tummy, which was 7 months pregnant. "Peter, it's been a while, huh?" replied Jasmine, who was taken aback when Peter knocked on the door. "You abandoned me at the altar and fled with your pregnant mistress, and I haven't seen you since." Peter, on his knees and in sobs, said, "Jasmine, my love, I came to ask for your forgiveness and a new chance to start over." But Jasmine's belly caught Peter's attention, and he announced, "You're pregnant." Jasmine answered politely and gently, "Yeah, I'm 7 months pregnant. I will become a mother." Peter was saddened and deeply saddened by what he saw. "And your child with your mistress Annabelle?" Jasmine inquired. "You are the father, right?" Peter sobbed, saying, "That child wasn't mine. Annabelle did me a favor. No, I wasn't the dad. All of it was a plot orchestrated by that miserable woman." Jasmine apologized to Peter. "I met an incredible man who genuinely loves me, and as you could see, I'm getting married and happy now," Peter said humbly, on his knees. "Please forgive me, Jasmine. Return to me. We cherish one another. Like I mentioned, Annabelle tricked me. It was not my child. I swear that after this, nothing will be the same, and I won't ever lie to you or cheat on you again. I now understand your feelings upon learning about Annabelle's treachery. Let go of this person. If need be, I'll even take care of this kid that's developing inside of you like it's my own. I'll stop at nothing to win your trust again. You are still loved by me. I am aware that you are my ideal woman. I've been thinking about you nonstop." Jasmine answered kindly, "Peter, I don't love you anymore, but I did forgive you a long time ago. I've suffered so much because of you. I'm genuinely happy now. I apologize. I hope everything in your life turns out well and that you find new love. Please don't return to this page now. The idea of my ex-fiancé troubling us at our door may not sit well with my hubby. Peter, goodbye. May God bless you, and I send you my best wishes." With deliberate slowness, Jasmine shut the door and entered her home. Peter was so unhappy and heartbroken that he sobbed uncontrollably at Jasmine's doorstep. He was overcome with regret when he recalled what Jasmine had said the day he and Annabelle had fled, realizing that life had held him accountable for what he had done to her. Jasmine gave birth to a boy once her pregnancy was over, which delighted Nick and Jasmine. Everyone was content. Peter was forced to bear the costs of his decision in the interim. His acquaintances severed their links with him, no lady desired to be engaged with him, and his family shunned him. Peter was left alone and without company. Peter traveled to a different city and to the closest bus station, missing Jasmine every day and preserving a photo of her from their engagement days as a keepsake. The lesson from this tale is to never exchange a genuine love for a person who could cheat and mislead you. It's possible that the one who actually loves you has moved on, leaving only regret and sorrow in their wake. The phrase, "love endures all things," doesn't allude to betrayal and infidelity. Rather, it refers to hardships, suffering, and tribulations. My friends, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this tale. View additional stories that show up on your screen by visiting our channel. Remember to hit like and subscribe. Till the following video.
The laughter and music that filled the air made the perfect setting for what was supposed to be the best day of my life. My name is Rachel, and I looked amazing in my white gown, making me feel like a princess. Everything seemed fantastic to me. That brief yet happy moment was gone in an instant. "Rachel, dear, could you come here for a moment?" My mother-in-law's speech broke the festive atmosphere. It was sharp and bordering on authoritarian. As I walked up to my mother-in-law, I saw that she was standing quite stiffly, but I still managed to smile at my friends and excuse myself. Her grin was too small for her eyes, and her posture was clearly tight. "What is it, Mrs. Paul?" I asked, trying to come across as calm and nice. "It's all about the way you look at me, Rachel," she said, her tone cold and accusing. "I am aware of the look of scorn that is emblazoned on your face. I should be treated with respect, not disrespect, as your husband's mother." I was taken aback by her statement. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had said. "I believe you have a misunderstanding, Mrs. Paul. I reply out of nothing but deference to you." I was confused for a while. "Respect, huh?" she mocked, her brows narrowing. "I see how you roll your eyes at me and sigh when I say something. Do you think I'm not seeing it? Even my kids have vanished due to your deceit." She was yelling louder now, and I sensed that other people were starting to turn to watch us. It was hard for me to keep my cool. Before I could respond, my husband Kyle materialized by our side, his worried-looking forehead wrinkled. After a quick look at each of us, he asked, "Mom, what's going on here?" "Kyle, your partner," Mrs. Paul retorted, her voice shaking with emotion. "She's been nothing but disrespectful to me. She's been looking down on me, and today of all days, she's been the worst." Tears filled her eyes, and she tightened her grip on Kyle's arm. "Rachel, is this true?" Kyle asked, his expression displaying a mix of doubt and confusion. His gaze swept over mine, waiting for an answer. "No, it's not true," I stated clearly and quietly. "I haven't treated her badly at all. She is not being truthful." "You're lying, Rachel," Mrs. Paul yelled, gripping Rachel's arm more tightly. "I am your mother. May I tell you a falsehood?" Tears were now running down her face, adding to the drama that was unfolding before all of them. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. Kyle's worried expression turned to fury. Without warning, he lifted his hand and slapped me hard across the face. The room became still as the explosion continued, and I remained still, instinctively grabbing for my burned cheek. No one in the area stood up, but everyone around gasped in shock. I was feeling sad, betrayed, and angry all at once. I was at a loss for words, much alone how to reply. I questioned in a whisper, not really addressing anyone in particular. How could you? I was doubting the universe overall, as well as Kyle and his mother, as if I was looking for an explanation for this nightmare I had fallen into. Kyle stammered when he realized what he had done and murmured, "I'm sorry, Rachel. I was just that." But I interrupted him abruptly. "No," I answered, keeping my cool and being tough despite my inner turmoil. "You've shown me exactly who you are." The physical blow was not nearly as painful as the hurt I felt when I realized my freshly married partner was capable of such actions. I turned away from them both, knowing that at that moment everything had changed. I turned to face the visitors. Most of them were still staring at me in stunned stillness. Despite my beating heart, I said, "I'm sorry you had to witness this," with composure. "Please don't stop enjoying the celebrations. I require some alone time." I walked out of the room before I got a response. The music had stopped and the laughter had died down. The world outside seemed so different, and the happiness and excitement of the day seemed like a faraway memory. As soon as I found a quiet spot away from the hubbub and loudness, my mind was buzzing with ideas about what had just happened. How could everything have fallen apart so quickly? Just a few seconds earlier, I was ecstatic, believing that I was beginning a new chapter in my life. I had the impression that everything had significantly changed in my reality. It was all too much to take. The accusations from my mother-in-law, the smack from Kyle, and the disapproving looks from the visitors. I needed time to think things through and process everything. Was I really supposed to stay in this marriage after all that had happened? Would Kyle ever earn my trust again? The questions were weighing heavily on my mind as I stood there feeling lost and unsure of what to do next. But one thing was for sure. My life had changed, and it would never be the same. My perfect day was gone, to be replaced by something darker and more painful. Finding the best line of action was my duty at hand, even if it meant working alone. I turned to face the group and heard the murmuring start from behind. However, I refused to let that affect me. I kept my head held high, knowing that this was not the end for me. Instead, it signaled the beginning of something new. My mind was racing, trying to come up with a plan. This humiliation would not remain unretaliated. I would like compensation for what happened today. I stepped into the serenity of the bridal suite and allowed myself to feel the emotions I had been holding at bay. Tears filled my cheeks, but not just any old painful ones. And those were tears of determination. I won't give up right now. I wouldn't want to fall prey. I would triumph over this and come out on top. I had never been more determined. After what had happened, I knew I had to take action. I had to make sure they didn't get away with it. Though I had a plan, I needed evidence, hard evidence of the way that Kyle and his mother had treated me. I decided to hire a private investigator to help me. Mr. Sean was the kind of guy, discreet and practical, that I needed in this delicate situation. I said to Mr. Sean over the phone, "I need your help. My spouse, Kyle, and his mother haven't exactly been friendly to me. I need evidence of what they did." "What kind of evidence are we looking for?" Mr. Sean asked in a composed manner. "Everything that exhibits a pattern," I replied. "Emotional, financial, or even legal abuse. Anything that can prove what they've been doing." "Intelligent," he said. I'll start with some background research and monitoring. I will look into everything, including their pasts and possessions. You will get what you need. I felt like I was finally taking control when Mr. Sean was on my side. I started recording every interaction I had with Kyle and his mother, including our phone calls and talks. I needed all the evidence I could get. With me, nothing would be left to chance. During all of this chaos, my closest friend Maria became my primary source of comfort and support. She had been there for me the entire time. On a particularly bad day, I told Maria, I don't know how I would get through this without you. She comforted me, saying, you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you always. So what's the plan? Maria inquired. I'm gathering proof, I told her, outlining my strategy. Mr. Sean is also contributing. I wish to reveal the true nature of Kyle and his mother. Maria gave me a worried glance. Be careful, Rachel, she cautioned. They're not going to see this coming, and when they do, they'll be furious. I know, I nodded, but I can't let them get away with this. Over the next few weeks, the evidence I collected started to build up. It was clear from the phone calls that Kyle's tone was often aggressive and demeaning. The financial records Mr. Sean uncovered revealed just how much control Kyle's mother had over his assets. Some of the transactions we found were questionable, hinting at possible fraud. The more we uncovered, the more disturbing the picture became. One evening, Maria and I sat down together to review all the findings. As we combed through the documents, something jumped out at us. Look at this, Maria said, pointing to a series of bank statements. They're moving large sums of money, but where is it all going? And these emails, Maria added, scanning through them. It sounds like they're planning something, but we don't know what yet. We need to connect the dots, I said, feeling the weight of everything we were uncovering. This isn't just about emotional abuse anymore. There's a whole web of lies and manipulation going on. Maria's eyes widened as she stared at the evidence in front of us. Rachel, we're on to something big here, she said, her voice filled with both excitement and fear. The more I delved into the evidence, the clearer it became that Kyle and his mother were involved in more than just toxic behavior. This went beyond their mistreatment of me. They were hiding something much bigger, something possibly illegal. I could feel the truth slowly unraveling, and I was determined to see this through to the end. As the days passed, I became more focused on my goal. I wasn't just collecting evidence for myself anymore. I was uncovering a story of deceit and manipulation that needed to be exposed. Kyle and his mother had spent years weaving this web of lies, but now I had the power to tear it all apart. There was still much to be done, but I was no longer the helpless bride they had tried to humiliate. I was stronger than they had ever realized, and soon the truth would come to light. This wasn't just about getting justice for myself. It was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. I wasn't sure how things would end, but one thing was clear. I was ready to fight, and I wasn't going to back down. The whispers of that day were nothing compared to the roar of truth that was about to come crashing down on them. I would no longer be a victim of their games. I would be the one in control. I started to piece it all together. Looking over the documents again, I realized something shocking. I think they're embezzling funds from Kyle's company, I said to Maria, my voice barely above a whisper. These documents, they're incriminating. Maria looked at me, her face serious. Rachel, this is really serious. You need to be careful. They won't take kindly to being exposed. I know, I said, feeling a mix of fear and determination. But I can't back down, not now. There's too much at stake. The evidence wasn't just about how cruel they had been to me. It was more than that. It pointed to serious criminal activity. I had everything I needed to make a move, and it was time to come up with a plan to bring them to justice. It was also time to take back control of my life. Maria, I said, feeling the weight of my decision, I'm going to expose them publicly. Maria hesitated for a moment, knowing the risk involved. Rachel, that's risky. You're playing with fire. But if anyone can do it, it's you. With Maria by my side and the evidence in my hands, I felt stronger than I had in a long time. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This was about justice, about making sure Kyle and his mother faced the consequences of what they had done. It was time to show the world who they truly were. The next step was clear. I had to bring everything out into the open. I decided to organize an event, pretending it was for a big announcement. I invited friends, family, and even a few media contacts, people who would help get the story out. The venue was lavish, with an atmosphere full of excitement and curiosity. Everyone was eager to hear the news. As I stood at the front of the room, I took a deep breath. The time had come. Thank you all for coming. I began, keeping my voice steady and my expression calm. Kyle and his mother, Mrs. Paul, stood beside me, smiling. They had no idea what was about to happen. Rachel, darling, we're so proud of you, Kyle said, his voice sweet but insincere. Whatever the announcement is, we support you. His words felt like poison, but I stayed composed. I've gathered you all here to share some important truths, I said, pausing to gauge the room's reaction. Truths about my marriage and about the Paul family. Mrs. Paul's smile faltered. Truths, she repeated, her voice shaky with a mix of confusion and fear. Rachel, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the abuse, the lies, and the illegal activities that have been going on behind the scenes, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. The room went silent. The tension was thick, and all eyes were on me. Rachel, have you lost your mind? Kyle's face turned red, his anger barely under control. Quite the opposite, Kyle, I said calmly. I've never been more sane, and I've never been more sure of what I need to do. I gestured to the screen behind me. Exhibit A. I announced as a video started playing. It was a recording of one of our many heated, abusive conversations. The crowd gasped as they heard Kyle's voice, full of anger and cruelty. The murmurs grew louder, and I saw Mrs. Paul's face go pale. Her hands started to tremble. This is just the beginning, I said, holding up a folder filled with documents. These papers show financial irregularities, embezzlement, fraud. It's all here. You can't do this, Rachel, Kyle shouted, his voice a mix of pleading and threat. You're ruining everything. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not ruining anything, Kyle. I'm exposing the truth. A truth that everyone deserves to see. The media personnel who had been invited started clicking their cameras, capturing every moment of this dramatic revelation. There was no turning back now. This was it. Rachel, please. Mrs. Paul's voice was barely a whisper. Her confidence shattered. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need for this public display. I shook my head. No, Mrs. Paul. No more private discussions. The time for hiding is over. The responses in the room changed as I showed more proof. While several visitors shook their heads in shock, others expressed shock. Though there were murmurs and whispers among the throng, nobody could dispute what they were witnessing. Mrs. Paul and Kyle stood motionless, their facades of decency melting away to reveal what was really going on. "This is my story," I began, turning to face the group. "It's a tale about overcoming cruelty and speaking up against injustice. I refuse to be a victim any longer." The occasion concluded with a rush of activity. As I was being surrounded by reporters, numerous guests came up to me with encouraging and uplifting remarks. I had done it. I had shown the truth. And I had done it while remaining composed and strong. It was a triumphant moment for me as I at last got back my voice and my authority. It wasn't the end, though. The following stage, when everything would be resolved finally, was the courtroom. Feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination, I sat in that austere, intimidating room. Beside me, prepared to battle for justice, was my lawyer. I was prepared to see my journey through to its absolute end because this was its last act. Across the courtroom, I couldn't help but observe how uncomfortable Kyle and Mrs. Paul appeared to be. As the trial got underway, their once confident expressions were suddenly displaying apprehension. My attorney stated, "Your Honor, we are here to present the case against Kyle and Mrs. Paul," in a firm and confident tone. "This isn't just about a divorce. It's about years of emotional and financial abuse that Rachel has endured." From across the room, whispering to me, Kyle leaned in to say, "Rachel, you can't win this. You're crossing a line." With a forceful yet calm voice, I addressed his gaze. "Kyle, this isn't about winning. It has to do with fairness. It's about being authentic to everyone." The trial proceeded, and my attorney skillfully presented the evidence. The evidence of the horrible existence I had led was abundant and included financial records showing their manipulation, recordings of Kyle's harsh remarks, and other supporting evidence. Every bit of evidence was indisputable. My attorney went on, "Your Honor, as you can see, the evidence is overwhelming. We are not only seeking a divorce, but also legal actions for the wrongs that have been committed against my client." Mrs. Paul looked scared and tried to shield herself. "Your Honor, it's all just a misunderstanding." Rachel's voice was weak, even to her own ears, as she exaggerated. I looked straight at her and maintained a steady, direct glance. "Going too far. The evidence speaks for itself. You can't hide from the truth any longer." The court listened intently, reviewing all of the testimony and corroborating evidence. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she rendered her decision. "In light of the overwhelming evidence, I grant the divorce and order legal actions against both Kyle and Mrs. Paul for their conduct." The gavel struck, and I felt vindicated and at ease. It was completed. I had confronted them, stood up for justice, and prevailed. I had at last closed a long and painful chapter in my life. I came to the realization that it was time to move past my legal disputes and start the process of recovering and starting over. I found myself in the country, in a little, peaceful house away from the chaos and drama of my former existence. The peace and beauty of the location were just what I needed. I sat on the porch of my new house, sipping a nice cup of tea and enjoying the peaceful surroundings. The trees were gently swaying in the breeze, the sun was beaming softly, and distant birds were chirping. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt a wave of peace. This was a fresh start, a life free from abuse, dishonesty, and misery. My voyage had been difficult, but it had been good. Not only had I survived, but I had triumphed. Now that I had rediscovered my inner power and voice, I felt free. As the sun began to set and cast a pleasing glow across the horizon, I smiled to myself. I was in the ideal location at the ideal moment. I could make a happy, hopeful, healing future for myself, even if it was uncertain. This was my inspiring tale. The tale of a woman who refused to give up. I'd overcome all the obstacles and was now enjoying a life of freedom and peace of mind. I understood that even if my journey had come to an end, I still had a brighter, better life ahead of me. The journey of Rachel has come to an end. Do you think she was right to expose her husband's mother and pursue legal action against him? Perhaps if she had handled it differently. Share your thoughts in the space below the comments. If you enjoyed the tale and would like to see more like it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. With your help, we can tell more engaging tales.